Ollie had always been fascinated by the supernatural. Ever since childhood, his family had believed in spirits, and some even practiced spiritual healing. His curiosity led him to haunted places, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to experience. One evening, as he prepared to leave his house, his neighbor, Malik Sahib, approached him hesitantly. He needed Ollie to check on a young girl in one of his rental properties. She had been unwell for days, refusing to eat or drink, yet somehow still breathing. When Ollie entered the dimly lit house, an eerie silence greeted him. The girl, barely 16 or 17, sat hunched over, clutching her throat as though something invisible was choking her. Her eyes were wild, desperate, her mouth open in a silent scream. Her family stood around her helplessly, their faces pale with fear. The girl's mother, her voice quivering, explained that for 3 days, she had neither eaten nor sipped even a drop of water. Yet she had not weakened, had not collapsed. It defied logic. Ollie's rational mind searched for an explanation, but deep within, he felt a terrible certainty that something far beyond reason was at play. Determined to get her medical attention, he took her to a clinic. She sat in the back seat, eerily still, her mother and aunt beside her, while Malik Sahib rode in the front. The streets were quiet, but an oppressive presence seemed to cling to them. The air felt thick, suffocating. Something was watching. Ollie could feel it. At the clinic, he explained the situation. The doctor had yet to arrive, and they were asked to wait. The emergency ward was nearly empty. They placed the girl on a bed. The moment she sat, something changed. Her body arched backward unnaturally, her limbs convulsing in ways no human should move. She dropped forward into a prayer-like position, then jerked violently. A deep, guttural sound erupted from her throat, inhuman, chilling. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. Ollie knelt beside her. He could hear his own heart pounding in his ears. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice firm despite the growing dread inside him. The girl froze. The air turned heavier. Then, she spoke, but it was not her voice. "I won't leave." The sound sent shivers through everyone in the room. It was a man's voice, deep and guttural. Her mother gasped, covering her mouth in horror. Her aunt whimpered, stepping back. Malik Sahib stood frozen. A cold, nauseating dread twisted in Ali's stomach. This was no medical emergency. This was something else. Something ancient. Something malevolent. Ali pressed on, demanding to know the entity's name. It let out a growl, a sound not of this world. "I will not tell you." Its voice was hollow, echoing in ways that made the room itself seem to shrink. "She is mine." He called his uncle, a man well-versed in spiritual matters. On speakerphone, his uncle instructed him to play a specific Quranic verse in the girl's ear. As soon as the words filled the air, she let out a shriek so unearthly it curdled the blood in their veins. Her body writhed, her hands clawing at the bed. Her head snapped from side to side as if something inside her was burning. "It hurts," the entity howled. "Stop it. My children are burning." Children. The realization sent a fresh wave of horror through Ollie. This thing claimed to have a family. It wasn't just a lone spirit, it was something bigger, something much worse. Desperate, he struck a deal with it. The entity promised to leave for an hour, allowing the girl to eat and drink. Ollie agreed, knowing she needed strength. The moment he accepted, she collapsed like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Back home, she ate ravenously, gulping down water like she had been dying of thirst. Relief flooded her parents' faces. But just as hope returned, it was crushed. She stiffened. Her hands clutched at her throat once more. The sinister voice returned. "I'm back," it sneered. Ollie knew then that he had been played. The entity had been sent by someone, a relative who had cursed the girl. Out of revenge for a rejected marriage proposal, black magic had bound this thing to her, ordered it to end her life. But there was something even worse. They have my wife and children, the entity confessed. They are enslaved. I have no choice. The father, desperate, rushed to the graveyard the entity had described, unearthing the buried talismans that chained it to the girl. He destroyed them. Yet still, the entity clung to her. It was not done. They took the girl to a healer. As the man recited verses, she laughed, a sound so hollow, so filled with malice, that the air itself seemed to shudder. You think you can stop me? It mocked. Her eyes gleamed with something beyond human. Something ancient. Something evil. The healer pressed his hand to her forehead. She let out a scream so piercing it felt like the walls themselves vibrated. Her body convulsed. Then, silence. Had it finally left? They took her home, weary but hopeful. As they were about to part ways, she suddenly laughed again. You fools, she whispered, her voice dripping with mockery. I never left. That night, Ollie returned home, exhausted. But something was wrong. His pregnant wife sat on the bed, staring at him with an expression that made his skin crawl. She did not blink. Did not move. Her gaze locked onto him with an intensity that made his breath hitch. His mind reeled. The entity had warned him. If he interfered, it would come for him. Then she spoke. Did you think you could stop me? The voice was not hers. It was something else, something cold, something ancient. He had brought it home with him. Panic gripped him, but he forced himself to act. With shaking hands, he played the same Quranic verses that had tormented the entity before. His wife let out a strangled cry, her body jerking. Then, she collapsed. When she awoke, she remembered nothing. The days passed. The entity's presence faded. The girl recovered. But Ollie knew it wasn't gone. Somewhere, in the dark corners of the unseen world, it was still watching, waiting. The story wasn't over. It never would be. Because once they know your name, they never truly leave.